This is another episode of Getting to Know Our Missionary by GCPC Missions Committee. Today, we will hear from Riva and Brooks Cain. They are based in Nagoya, Japan. Since 2013, they have been serving missionary children and their families across the Asia-Pacific region with MTW in the Next ministry. In addition, they ministered to Japanese youth through a partnership with Christ Bible Institute, a Japanese seminary. They focus on reaching the next generation ministry leaders through local church called All Nations Fellowship. Riva and Brooks have 3 children, Quinn, Marley, and John. Please join me to welcome Riva and Brooks Cain. Hi. Hello, and thank you for coming.
Thank you for having us. It's good to be with you guys, even though it's over the internet.
Yeah.
Yes. Technology is great. We're thankful.
Yes.
Let us begin with your ministry highlights.
Wow. There's too many things to highlight, I think. But recently, the thing I've been most excited about is our local youth ministry called Connect. So we've got 7 or 8 different churches locally who are all coming together to try to provide a safe place in the city for teenagers to get to know one another, to get to know Jesus, and to get to know adults who love them. And it's just been beautiful to be able to work together with other churches in the body of Christ who are of different denominations. Some are bilingual churches, some are Japanese language only churches. I know that you guys support the Carter family as well. So their church has been joining in with this ministry as well. So it's just been really fun for me to see lots of kids from all over the city coming together and hearing about Jesus, and lots of churches working together to reach them. And I think especially a highlight for me is the fact that kids in most Japanese churches don't have many other people their own age who love Jesus. Japanese churches are small, so we're talking 35 around or 40 for the average church size. And so there's usually 1 or 2 teenagers. And so for them to have a place where they don't feel like the minority always, they have a place where they know, oh, there are other people who love Jesus. Even though I don't see him in my school, I'm not the only one. And loving Jesus is weird in this country, but there are other people with me who can encourage me and walk with me, and we can share our faith with other people. That's just been such a joy to see other folks just being encouraged in that way. So we're thankful to be able to be part of that ministry.
Yeah.
How about for you?
Yeah, I think counseling. So I also am a counselor and I do counseling twice a week. And some of that is with missionary kids and some of that is with people here in Japan. But I think a highlight for me, honestly, has been that we've been able to form a counseling network here in Japan. And so there's just 4 of us. It's 2 Japanese women and 1 other missionary who's been here for 30 years. And we all get together once a month and do group supervision together, and we share cases and talk through things, and get together twice a year now to do some continuing education together. And it's just been a really neat way to understand Japan and Japanese culture more, and to pray for our clients together. And that's been, I think, another way technology has been awesome is we've been able to do all that over Zoom because we're spread out across the country. So that's been really special for me.
Great, thank you. Well, what does your neighborhood look like? Maybe your home, your church. Would you describe that for us?
Yeah, I can start with the neighborhood.
Yeah.
So we live in the central part of Nagoya. It's called Nakaku, which means like middle section. And so we are kind of in the downtown area. We live in a building with about 13 floors, and there's 3 apartments on each floor. But the building next door to us has like 30 floors and probably 15 apartments on each floor. So there's lots of people living in a small space. We live next to a 8-lane highway. And so John, my youngest, always sits out on the balcony and looks for the trains that come by and yells, "Densha, densha." And then there's trucks and cars and stuff. And he loves just sitting and watching them come by. But Japan's a really quiet place. So we're not bothered so much by noise unless there's some crazy motorcyclist that comes by. But we're about maybe 5-minute walk from one of the biggest parks in Nagoya. It's called Tsurumai Park. And it's got beautiful cherry blossoms at this time of year. Because of COVID, we're not allowed to gather and sit under the cherry blossoms, but that's something that Japanese people love to do in the springtime, is just to sit underneath on tarps underneath the cherry blossoms and have meals together. So we love that about our neighborhood, that it just kind of comes alive in the spring, and everybody from all over the city comes together, and there's food trucks and things like that. So we love that about our city. And we also have around the corner a convenience store. It's kind of like a gas station with no gas. And whenever we forget to go to the grocery store to buy stuff, we can always run to the convenience store and get things. So my kids love, after school, probably once a week, we'll go to the convenience store and they can pick out whatever snack they want, and then we'll walk home.
And they now can go by themselves.
That's right. Yeah. So just having all of these things kind of in this area right around us within walking distance, being able to ride our bikes everywhere, use public transportation, not have to drive if we don't want to, is just really a wonderful thing about our neighborhood. So,
yeah.
How about our church or our house?
Yeah. So our apartment is a 3-bedroom apartment, but one of the bedrooms barely fits a queen size bed. So they're tiny.
So we're in our bedroom office right now.
Okay. Thank you.
It's tight, but it's honestly, the layout of it is just incredible. And the thing I love the most about our building is we're one of the only renters in our building. So everyone else owns their apartment. And so we've lived in this apartment for 6 years now, and we really know all the neighbors, and that's been really, really special, because a lot of other big apartment buildings, especially that are foreigner friendly, people move in and out a lot. And so to be able to really have deep relationships with the people, I mean, honestly, it makes me feel safer when Brooks is traveling and out of town. I know I can call our next door neighbor and she'll come over. So that's I really love our neighborhood. And so when we think about, we could trade all this and have a bigger place to live if we moved out to the suburbs. And then the other thing is, our neighborhood is 10% foreigners. And so we've become more and more aware of that.
Which is really strange in Japan, right?
Yeah, that's a high percentage.
You say that in America and it's like, oh, okay, whatever. But here, this is like, it's crazy. People walk around and see non-Japanese people and aren't sure exactly what to do in our area of town.
So Quinn just finished her first grade year in the public school here in our neighborhood, and she is one of 3 Americans, and there are 7 Filipinos in her 20-person class, and 1 Brazilian. And so it's really neat. Like, we're getting a very international experience. I'm learning just as much about the Philippines as I am about Japan living here. So we love our neighborhood.
Okay.
Yeah.
Briefly about All Nations Fellowship.
Yeah, so All Nations Fellowship, our church, is a bilingual church here in Japan. We have 2 campuses. One is downtown in close to our area, and another one is kind of out in the suburbs. We have about 40 worshipers at each campus, and we meet together on Sundays to worship Jesus as a family, and then we spread out during the week to obey him in our workplaces and in our homes and in our neighborhoods. And our pastor downtown, his name is Yu Eguchi, and he's my best friend in Japan, so I'm just really thankful to be able to work alongside him and support him and encourage him and learn from him. Yeah, we love our church, and we're really thankful that God put us where we are.
And he graduated, Yusana graduated from CBS, the seminary that we partner with. So we got to watch him graduate and get married to another student. And
he came on as an intern, and then as a church planting apprentice, and then he became a pastor at the church. So it's been fun to watch God lead him and grow him. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. What is the most challenging thing about learning Japanese as an English speaker?
This is the list is really long, I think, for me. There are a lot of challenging things about learning Japanese. One thing is that there are many different ways to say the same thing. So if you're speaking to someone on the same level as you, then you use certain vocabulary. If you're speaking to someone who's in a higher status than you, then you use certain vocabulary to be really formal with them. It's kind of like yes, ma'am, and yes, sir. But you have to add things or change out words throughout the sentence in order to be able to show respect. to them. And so that's difficult for me because I spend a lot of time with young people. So I'm speaking really casually. But then if I spend time with a Japanese pastor, then I need to be really careful about the way that I speak to them. And so, yeah, so that's a hard thing about the Japanese language for me.
Yeah.
I think kanji is also difficult. It's one of the alphabets that we have in Japanese. There are 3. One's for foreign words, and one is kind of a phonetic alphabet, and the other one is kanji, which is Chinese characters that have come into Japanese. And yeah, it's just hard to memorize them all and to know what all of them mean. And so if you run into a situation where you don't know some of the kanji, then good luck. You just kind of have to ask somebody.
Yeah, I think one of the hardest parts is how kind and polite all the Japanese people are. And so you can say something incorrectly every day of your life and no one will ever correct you. And they'll be like, oh, you're so good at Japanese. And so it makes it like, if you can find a friend that's willing to be like, you said that wrong, it's actually really helpful. I appreciate it. It kind of keeps my self-esteem up, but it's been really hard because it's hard to like get better. You could speak Japanese all day long and just never know that you're really speaking poorly.
Yeah. I think too, you get used to using certain vocabulary in certain contexts. So like my church vocabulary is pretty good, but if I have to go to into a medical situation, like with John, for instance, whenever we have to take him to some kind of like appointment or something, it's always harder to know what to say because I've only used often this particular set of vocabulary. And so to enter into a new sphere, it's just a lot of vocabulary I don't know. So.
And I will add lastly, the mask culture has been really hard to understand. I didn't realize how much I lean on watching people's mouths when we're speaking and communicating. And so it's added a whole extra layer of like, I really can't understand people when they're speaking to me because I can't see their mouths. And it's, John is in a speech therapy at the local center here, and there's actually an entire class for children with hearing impairments to learn how to communicate with masks. Like that's been added because that's added so much struggle to their lives. So that has also been hard for me as a second language speaker.
I never thought about it that way. Okay, you touched a little bit upon COVID, how COVID has affected your ministry. The biggest challenge and biggest unforeseen blessing, if you have found them.
Yes, yeah. We are working hard to to try to wade through to see them, right? Sometimes it's harder to see the benefits, but yeah, one of the beautiful things about living in Japan is that it's a really safe place, and we already had a culture of wearing masks. So even on the weather report, if there's going to be a lot of pollen, the sun in the top corner of the screen will have a mask on to warn everybody, maybe today you should wear a mask. So that was kind of a normal thing in Japan, to wear masks anyway. So we're thankful for that because that means that the spread of COVID has been relatively under control for almost the whole time since the outbreak started in February. Our church had to go online for the first 3 months of COVID. So February, March, and April, we were online. And then we have been online again for little seasons here and there. We were online from January, or from the end of December to February as well. So that's been a challenge for us, just to not be able to everybody meet together. But one of the unforeseen benefits, or 2 of them, I guess, one of them was that our church started meeting together in small groups to live stream the worship service. And so we got closer with certain people, even though it was in a small group, just to be able to get to know them better, to pray regularly, to hear their updates, people that we wouldn't have necessarily gotten to talk with deeply at the worship service. So really thankful for that. And it also provided opportunities to get together in small groups with our non-Christian friends. So one of our friends named Adika, who we've been praying for a long time and sharing the gospel with, we had more opportunities to get with her during COVID than we ever did before because so many of her activities have been canceled. And so we were able to just like invite her over, and you couldn't have a large group, but it meant that we could talk more deeply about things because we were in a smaller group, and she didn't have to worry about, can I share this in front of these people or not? And she was going through some hard things in her personal life. And so we really felt like God gave us that relationship and even that time during COVID to be able to minister to her in some special ways. And so if you think of it, you can be praying for Arika and her husband and her kids to come to know Jesus.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say that one of the challenges that people have spread back out. So all of y'all know Yuki that came and spent time with your church, but she's moved back in with her grandparents. So she's not in the city, and a lot of the rules have even prevented her from coming in. So I haven't seen her in over a year. And that's happened to a lot of our friends, ones that we'd been building relationships with. A lot of people went back out of the city to more of the like rural areas.
Especially if they have older like grandparents or parents, then they don't want to go out. They want to try to stay with them and care for them. And if they go out, they feel like they're running the risk of bringing coronavirus into the home. So they've been kind of sequestered, right?
So a lot of relationships that we had kind of been building, those people kind of disappeared. So that's been hard. But then on the flip side of that, the benefit, so our youth group, we were meeting in person in one of the local churches, and we had to move it online for a short time, just a couple meetings. But during that time, we were like, well, we're already meeting online. Let's include some people from other cities. So we have an MTW team up in Chiba outside Tokyo. So they all came and joined our youth group. And there were some kids in Tokyo with MTW connections that joined. And then they started inviting their friends. And we had people from all these different prefectures coming into the Zoom meeting. We had over 50 kids, and we played games. And then we broke into small groups. We had talks and we prayed together. And they're getting to not just see the Christians in their one small town, but they're meeting Christians from all over Japan that are their age in similar situations. And so that was really, I would always prefer youth group, especially to be in person, but it was a really neat benefit to be able to see all these kids come together and crave that. And most of them are doing online school. So the fact that they wanted to then spend their evening online was a big testimony to how much fellowship was important to them.
Right. Yeah. That's amazing. God is doing big things.
He is.
Even under COVID. Over the long haul of ministry in Japan, how have you seen God working in big ways?
I think one of my favorite ways that I've seen God working, obviously our favorite is when people come to know Jesus. And so, we haven't gotten to see many conversions, and it feels really slow, but the ones that we have gotten to see are like huge parties. And so we're just so thankful for God and his grace, just rescuing our friends. I think another huge thing that I love to see is when seminary students go out. They come to seminary, they often intern at our church, they take our youth ministry courses, and then they get sent out. And our church gets to pray for them, gets to give to them, and we get to see God creating new communities in places where there weren't any. So Toyama is on the west coast of Japan, and it's one of the least churched prefectures in all of Japan. And we had a student who's originally from Hokkaido in the north come to Nagoya for seminary and then go west in order to plant a church. And they just had to buy a new building because they didn't have enough space in their old building. And this, I think he went out 6 years ago, maybe. And so we are just praising the Lord for the way that he's blessing Nozomu's church and growing Trinity Church in Toyama. And so seeing that happen there and seeing that happen up north and seeing that happen even with Yusan in our own congregation is just a joy for me, because the whole point of us being here is to support the Japanese church. And so seeing God use Japanese people to minister to Japanese people is just a delight, I think, for me. Yeah,
I would just echo that. I think it's just fun to watch discipleship and to kind of be forced to reflect back. Our intern that we have right now is a guy that was a student at the Christian school and was in a cult and became a Christian through his Bible classes in this high school. Brooks was like speaking at his graduation and volunteering in chapels, and watched this kid become a Christian. And then now he's about to graduate from Liberty. He's been taking all online courses, and he's been interning with us going, I'm really considering full-time ministry. That's my next step. And so to just watch him, like, it's been a couple years in the making, but to see the way he just like dives in with these students at Connect, and the way he shares his story, which is much more accessible to most of our students, has just been really, really neat.
Yeah. I think too, watching our MKs that are all over Asia grow up to walk with the Lord, and then some of them to want to come back and help with different events and things like that, because they want to pour into the next generation. So with COVID, we haven't been able to have as many big events with our MKs as we usually do. We try to have at least an annual gathering for all of our Asia MKs. And this year we weren't able to do that, and we were pretty frustrated about it. We had a mission trip planned and some other things. And but what was beautiful was seeing some of the older MKs come to a college chat that we hosted. So our MKs, when they go from their country back to the States, a lot of them, not all of them go back to the States, but it's kind of their first time re-entering the States by themselves. And so trying to make that transition from being in their host culture back to this culture that is supposed to be their culture, but they don't really fit there anymore, is really challenging, because they're like an invisible immigrant. They don't know, other people around them don't know that they don't fit there. And they expect them to know all the rules. And so just watching the older MKs that we've walked with when they were younger, who have now graduated and gotten their own jobs, watching them minister to the younger MKs and share their stories and encourage them, pray for them. Yeah, I just think seeing the generation grow up and do ministry to the next generation is our most beautiful thing that we can see. So, yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for your time. And
absolutely.
Thank you. And we'll connect. I hope we can do this again soon.
Yeah.
I hope so too. I hope we get to see you in person really soon too. Yeah, we're so thankful for many, many years of your faithful prayers and financial support. We love you guys in Blacksburg. So thank you so much for caring for us and serving us, and for serving the Japanese people and missionary families all over Asia.
Thank you, and bye for now.